don't even know if we can do the intro. After learning that information, how am I just supposed to be like, welcome to the Women's Soccer Show?
Hello everyone and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Ali.
And I'm Sarah. This is probably the most ridiculous piece of information I've ever heard come out of your mouth. You just told me this and I was like, I think it took me about a minute to process, and then I was like, hang on. We're pushing record right now. A jury of the people are going to decide how absolutely insane this is.
So, I was just telling Sarah about a date night that me and my darling wife Kate had on Friday. We went to see Mean Girls, the musical, the movie. And I said that I preferred it to the original.
First of all, that's insane. That is absolutely insane. And to that I responded, if we're ranking them, it goes original movie first, Broadway show second, and then way down at the bottom is the movie musical. To which you responded what, Allie?
That I didn't watch it as a teenager, so I didn't have that response to it. The first time I watched it was during lockdown in COVID.
You literally went your whole life until what age?
I would have been 30.
I can't even process. By the time I turned 30, I probably, and this is not an exaggeration, had seen that film upwards of 100 times.
Yeah, no. We watched it on October 3rd, if that counts for anything.
And you didn't even know why you were watching it on October 3rd. You are a millennial. That is like our Bible. Okay, we are not here to talk about movies or musicals or musical movies or movie musicals. We are here to talk football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. And we had no WSL this weekend, but we had some action in the FA Cup. And in this episode, we're going to dive into the FA Cup. And then we're going to take you for a little bit of international news. And then we're going to take you right back to England. But this time we're going to go to the WSL and we're going to preview this coming weekend's incredible matchups. Like, you look at every matchup this weekend and every result this weekend will mean something big for how this league will turn out.
We talk about big weekends. This is a big weekend.
All right, let's take it to the FA Cup. We had the 5th round of play this weekend, and we're going to talk about how some of these championship teams performed against WSL teams. But before we get there, we're going to highlight, I think, the game that everybody had circled the biggest on their calendar, which was City versus Arsenal. Arsenal was, of course, coming off a horrid loss to West Ham United in the WSL, which we'd spoken about. They're kind of limping into this. City coming off of a big win. And City took the win 1-0. Arsenal are officially out of the FA Cup. They're now officially out of Champions League. They are out of the FA Cup. It's not looking good for the WSL title. And Conti Cup really does seem to be their final hope. This game was honestly, let's call it what it was, a damp squib. It's been a while since we've called something that on this podcast, and that's what this was.
It was boring. I'm going to say as a neutral, I had high hopes for this one because it's like a clash of WSL teams. These teams play each other. Normally something exciting happens. It's normally a big battle. And I was just bored. And by the end of it, I was just like, oh, someone score. Like, just someone score. Just so it's over, because I don't have to go into extra time and penalties because I can't be dealing with it. Like, just someone score.
At least with Penn, something exciting might have happened. Like, most, I would say 85% of this game was played in the middle third of the pitch. But instead of talking about the game, because, like, quite honestly, there's not that much to talk about, we can break down the tactics. But I think I'd rather look at each team individually, because these teams, while they were sitting very close in the table, technically they are still sitting pretty close in the WSL table. Coming up against each other in the 5th round of the FA Cup, it's a huge matchup. And while this obviously is not a WSL game, I think it's fair to take this and talk about each team at large. We can talk about Arsenal. We kind of talked a lot about it last week, but there's a little more to add this week. And we can talk about City, because for the team that we've been saying is arguably one of the most consistent, if not the most consistent, all season and all year, we haven't gotten to dive into them that much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like normally last few seasons when we've talked about them, it's been nothing but critical. But do you know what? They've actually done all right this year, surprisingly.
I think there's a good moment to talk about City too, because they made a huge move in the offseason to get Jill Roord. And she has been just massive for them all year. And obviously, recently they lost Joe Roard to an ACL injury. And I think there then was a big question mark around, okay, how will City adjust? How can they progress? How will they now match up against these more top tier rivals without one of their key players and key midfielders on a team that likes to play possession based football? And this game, granted, Arsenal have played better, but this is still a big game. I can't take anything away from City. And I think when we look at City, the question becomes what makes them so consistent? And how were they able to continue and almost progress as if Joe Ward was still there? I mean, you really didn't see the hole that Joe Ward left in this game.
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out to Jess Park, who was playing that Joe Ward role, and she did so well for such a young talent. You know, she's been on loan for last few seasons to get that experience, and she came into that match as if she's been playing with City the whole season. So yeah, shout out to Jess Park for filling in that gap.
I couldn't agree more. And I also want to highlight what I think is the reason Manchester City has been able to be so consistent in their results, and it's their defense. They are so incredibly organized with their two center backs in Alex Greenwood and Alexandri. Alexandri is just quietly having one of the best seasons for center backs across the year, across all of the tournaments, across the WSL. She has been so key, and I'm happy we get to talk about her. I mean, she actually was the goal scorer too, but to focus on their defense, they have been so organized. They've been quietly keeping the best goals against in the WSL, only 8 goals on the season. And this is what allows them to win tight games, just like this one in this 5th round of the FA Cup. They kept it scoreless. And then what do they have on the other end? They have Shaw, they have Hemp, they have Kelly, and they can use that speed up front, and they have the goal scorers. They have that arsenal, no pun intended, to put goals away when needed after keeping a clean sheet. And I think what's key about them and what this defense allows them to be is that they're so dynamic. They are so versatile. They can play possession based when they need to through the midfield, or they can lean on their defense and play counterattack with that speed that we just mentioned up top. They're dynamic. And that's why with the loss of Jill Ward, they still look solid. That's the mark of a good team. They were so dynamic enough in how they know how to adjust to different styles of play within themselves that we don't notice that huge gaping hole. We noticed it when Leah Williamson went down for Arsenal because they weren't as dynamic.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it does feel like Man City have just been quietly getting on with it. You know, like they haven't been in the conversation, especially for the WSL, for a long time. Apart from when we've been calling them out for certain things. But this season, they've had some spectacular wins. We think about the 7-0 win against Tottenham early on in the season, but they've just been quietly getting on with it and just building that momentum. And it's quite good to see. Like, I'm glad to see them back, you know?
I would love to see Kiara Keating developing goal as well.
Yes.
And other than that one bobble that will be talked about forever, that we can also chat about if we want to, she was exceptional in this game.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, it's another one where she sort of got thrown into this starting position because of Roebuck's suspension from last season, and also the fact that she's fallen out of favour. McKeever isn't quite there for Man City, so she got thrown into this position to be like, you are our starting keeper. You are young. Let's see what you can do. And she has taken that and thrived upon it and just is becoming this amazing keeper. And we've seen her get England call-ups. And again, she's commanding that back line like a keeper who's got 10 years on her. She's absolutely phenomenal.
She looked like Mary Earps on some of those saves. She really did.
Speaking of keepers, I do want to talk about Arsenal's keeper, because it's one of the first times we've seen Sabrina D'Angelo out this season. Obviously, Zinsberg had a bit of a disaster last week, so it's unknown whether this was a planned change and that, you know, doing what most people do, which is play your second keeper in your cup games, or if this was a choice by Jonas to rest Zinsberg and give Sabrina D'Angelo a shot. I thought she played really well. Granted, she didn't have much to do, apart from
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't feel like she was really tested in that goal. I mean, you can't hang that goal on her at all. I don't even count that as an opportunity for her to make a save.
No, that was all on her defenders.
But yeah, I mean, it was nice to see somebody new in goal for Arsenal, the 30-year-old Canadian. I mean, is she the answer to Arsenal's keeper problems? No. Is it nice to see maybe a change up because the first string goalkeeper just wasn't playing up to par? Yeah, I appreciate seeing that.
And like, we want to talk about keepers because the woeful stat for Arsenal is that since the start of Champions League and WSL this year, they've had 4 clean sheets.
Across 25 games is the stat. I feel like that says everything, right? You can't be a top team. You can't compete at the top levels if you just keep allowing goals. It's really that simple. I mean, that was the difference in this game. City were able to keep that clean sheet, and Arsenal were not. And that sounds really trivial, but at the end of the day, Arsenal make very sloppy mistakes, and that's what led to this goal by City. And City don't make those sloppy mistakes in the back anymore. They just don't.
No, and let's talk about that goal, because I want to talk about that goal because it's come down to the same player that caused the equaliser last week, which is Steph Catley. Steph Catley, what is going on with you, babes? Because you're having a bit of a wobble. Like, she's just not covering her players anymore. It seems that she's not.
I'll actually say, Catley had her mark, and she actually beat her mark to the ball. The problem was she tried to trap the ball inside of her own 6-yard line, her own 6-yard box, right in front of the goal. It's just not a good idea. You know, you gotta try to clear that one touch. You gotta put your body in front of it and try to let it roll out. But you can't trap it in your own 6-yard box. That's insanity. It was another Arsenal defender, I don't know who it was, who clearly lost their mark to leave Alexandri wide open to pick that ball up, because Catley just put that ball on a platter for Alexandri. But yeah, a bit of a wobble for Catley, some sloppy play across the board. But listen, again, we're not going to hang it all on Catley because Arsenal have been sloppy across the board.
Do you want to talk about was it a goal or not a goal?
We can talk about it because I think in the larger picture, and for those who didn't see, essentially it was a cross in. Kiara Keating, Manchester City's goalkeeper, bobbled it kind of into the goal, caught it immediately, but there's not VAR, and there really wasn't a good enough angle, like a goal line angle, to see if the whole ball did go over the goal line or anything. Do I think it was a goal? I have absolutely no idea because I couldn't get a good enough angle on it. But I think the discussion around this is what really gets talked about at many major tournaments in the women's game, which is it feels like in a lot of tournaments there's like no VAR for a while, and then suddenly in the finals there's VAR. And that inconsistency, I'm not even a fan of VAR, but I just want consistency. If you're going to put VAR in the final, you have to have it across the earlier rounds. And you can't give me the excuse of like, oh, well, you know, the stadiums that they're playing in, it's not set up for VAR. Then play in a stadium that's set up for VAR. There's like a really easy solution there. Or pay the money to make sure that you are set up for VAR in those stadiums. But you can't have these inconsistencies. Either don't have VAR for the tournament or have VAR for the tournament. But these inconsistencies are killing me. All right, let's move on from this game into some of the other FA Cup games that happened this weekend, because we had a lot of championship teams playing WSL teams. We had Tottenham hosting Charlton. We had Wolverhampton hosting Brighton.
Wolves are actually lower. Wolves are actually in.
Oh, that's true. Excuse me.
They're in the National League, which is even more impressive because they did manage to hold on for Brighton for quite a while until like the last 10 minutes.
Yes. More championship teams. We had London City hosting Liverpool. We had Crystal Palace playing at Chelsea, and we had Southampton hosting Manchester United. And it is worth discussing because Southampton gave United a good game. Crystal Palace kept Chelsea to a 1 goal. And Charlton lost just 1-0 to Tottenham. And these are championship teams playing these WSL teams really well. And across the board, none of these teams were parking the bus and just playing for, hoping for a counter. They were playing these teams well. And for me, this speaks to the larger picture of WSL and expansion. Let's see. Charlton right now, they're in first place in the championship. Crystal Palace is in third. Southampton's in fourth. This speaks to, and you've probably heard us talk about it on this podcast, we've spoken about it with Amy when she's been on, it's time to open up the league for more teams, for more competition, and start relegating a couple teams and allowing a couple teams to be promoted. We're seeing now that these championship teams at the top, they can compete with the WSL squad. It's time. If this isn't full proof of it, I don't know what else is.
No, 100%. I agree. 100% agree. Look, you know what? FA, look at what's going on. Let's open up that pyramid.
And before we go around the world, we're going to make a quick pit stop in Switzerland to talk about some news that's coming out of the Switzerland national team. Now, this has not gotten, frankly, any coverage in the US. Very little, if none, in England, if I'm correct, Allie.
Yeah, there's like no English media covering this whatsoever. And literally, I picked it up because of Twitter.
Fill us in here. What is the situation in Switzerland and why is this worthy of discussing right now?
So, for anybody who isn't aware, that next year is the Euros. England go off and defend their title, and Switzerland are the host country. And they put in a bid saying that their central fund were going to put in 15 million Swiss francs to hosting the Women's Euros, which may not sound like a lot, but Switzerland's a tiny country. So that's quite a chunk of change for them, their central funding. They've now turned around and said, actually, we're only going to give you 4 million Swiss francs, which is more than 3/4 slashed out of the budget for hosting the games. This is going to be huge because it's the central funding that's been slashed. So these host cities have now got to make up that deficit because the host cities were going to put their money towards it, but now they've got to put even more of their own money, which is not likely because a city's budget versus a country's budget is vast. They've just decided that they can't afford it. They've just literally is what's coming out and it makes me sick because Switzerland wanted to host the men's Euros a couple of years ago and they were promising hundreds of millions of Swiss francs to host these games. So the fact that 15 million was all they were offering is an insult in the first place. To then slash it to 4 million is gross.
It's infuriating. I mean, this is what we talk about in terms of there's so much we can talk about in terms of like what it means to invest in the women's game to see growth. You can look at it on a, league by league basis. You can look at that teams you need to invest. You can also look at it on a tournament basis, like we talk about with the World Cup. You have to invest in the stadiums, you have to invest in the infrastructure, and you have to invest in the marketing. And otherwise, it's not only not going to grow the game, it's just a detriment to it. And it's kind of like, why are we doing this if we're doing this half-heartedly? And why did you want to host it if you want to do it half-heartedly? It's absolutely infuriating, and it really speaks to this trend where I think with how England hosted it last year, I think we all expected that trend would continue and the next host would put a lot of effort into it and be proud of hosting the Euros in the same way that England did and advertise it. And that's not at all what we're seeing. And for Switzerland, who's frankly, their national team is starting to improve. Their league, their domestic league is starting to improve. They're at a moment where if you pour money into this right now, it could be massive for an absolute explosion of the women's game in your country.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that they're saying that's going to be affected by this slashing of budget is the infrastructure, because one of the pitches that Switzerland had, which many say swung it in their favour, was that they were going to put on the shuttle buses. And for anybody who did the England Euros, you saw themselves that they would get you to the stadiums from central points. And it was if you had a ticket to the match, you were going to get on this free shuttle bus and it would take you to the stadium. They're now scrapping that. That's not going to happen because they haven't got the funds.
Once again, now we're talking about accessibility, right? We're talking about accessibility and how, just like we talk about it in terms of watching on TV. Hey, if you put this on, a regular channel that everybody watches in prime time, your numbers are going to increase exponentially. If you put it on an obscure website that you can't even put on your television, nobody's going to tune in. And it's the same with in-person games. You are actively putting up barriers between the game in the fans. And they right now in the women's game, we need to lower the barrier of entry, not raise it. And that's raising it. It's infuriating. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world. Starting off with Germany, it is tight at the top in the Bundesliga with Wolfsburg and Bayern switching between first and second. After a comprehensive win over Cologne, it is Bayern who are currently top dog with 33 points. Wolfsburg are not far behind, though, with 32.
To Australia, and a draw with bottom of the table Canberra this weekend cements Perth's glory downward spiral as they fall to 6th. First place Melbourne City could only manage a draw with third place Sydney FC, which has allowed second placed Western United to pull within 1 point of the league leaders.
And over to Mexico, La Liga MX. Game of the week has to be Guadalajara versus Santos. Guadalajara took the match 10-2. This record-breaking result is the highest scoring game in league history. League leader Tigres also managed an impressive 7-0 win to keep their big start to the season.
And finally to Scotland, Partick Thistle become only the second team this season to take points off of Rangers. Mid-table Thistle managed to hold the Glasgow side to a 0-0 draw. Wins for both Celtic and Glasgow City narrows Rangers' lead to just 4 points.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides research analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
And finally, we look ahead to the WSL weekend. We've previewed it in our intro, but this is truly a huge weekend with massive games and matchups that will truly determine the table and how the end of the season's going to look.
All right, we're going to do this chronologically. So we're going to kick it off Friday. We have Chelsea hosting Manchester City. There's a Friday night game in England. This will be 2:15 for those of you on the East Coast in the U.S., 11:15 a.m. for those of you on the West Coast in the U.S. Oh my gosh, is this going to be a fun one? Chelsea currently sitting just 3 points ahead of Manchester City in the table. 34 points, Manchester City with 31. Listen, just with that on the table, the highlight of this game is that if City want any hopes of the title, this is a must-win game. A tie is not good enough, and obviously a loss can't help you. Oh, it is a must-win situation if City want any chance at this title.
Yeah, and for anybody with short memories, remember last time these two faced each other in the league, it was a crazy 1-1 draw. City took the lead. Then there was 2 sending offs through yellow card accumulation, and then Chelsea got that last minute equalizer in like the 92nd minute or something like that. So this game is gonna be impactful, to say the least.
And this, honestly, this is really fun because we're going to get this matchup on, what's the date? February 16th. And then 3 weeks later, we get the rematch up in the semifinals of the Conti Cup.
Yeah. And for anybody who's been following these matches, it's not a trophy competition unless we get a Manchester City-Chelsea semi-final. These two face each other in so many semi-finals. It's just a running joke now about just a coin toss to who's going to host it.
Let's talk about this. I mean, it really is. It's hard to pick a favorite here. I think that these teams are so evenly matched. This is going to be an absolute battle. This is going to feel like a championship game. This is going to feel like they're literally playing this singular game to fight for the title. And it's hard for me to bet against Chelsea in those types of games.
Ooh, see, this is where we're going to disagree because I'm going to Manchester City in this one.
Really? Chelsea hosting City, and you're going City?
Yeah. I'm going 100% because I still maintain that the league is not Hayes' focus. The Champions League is Hayes' focus. And if they have to let one thing slip, it's going to be the league. Whereas Man City have a point to prove. They have been down and out the last 2 seasons. Yeah, they could win the Conti Cup. Yeah, they could go on the FA Cup. They've done all that. They want to prove that they can win the league once again and get back into Champions League. And I think there's more fight in Man City. They've got more goal scorers, more opportunities. I might be crazy, but
I think you are, because I think that the Emma Hayes comment would make sense if there was a Champions League game coming midweek that following week, but there's not. There's not Champions League play again until March 19th. So I think right now, Chelsea are great with mentality. And I think right now, they've put that as far outside of their heads as they possibly can. And right now, their focus is the league. And they're going to come out here knowing that this is like a title game. And once again, it's Emma Hayes' last season. Everybody knows that. I think Chelsea are going to come out firing on all fronts. But we'll see. All right, on to Saturday. We had one game Friday, we got one game Saturday, and the rest Sunday. Saturday, we're just moving a little bit down the table now. We had the 2 top teams. Now we're having the 3 and 4 team with Arsenal hosting Manchester United. And honestly, just as Chelsea versus City is a must-win if City want to be in contention for the title, this game, Arsenal versus United, is a must-win if you want to be part of the Champions League, frankly. Whoever wins this matchup will probably get that 3rd and final Champions League spot.
100%. 100%. The fact it's at Arsenal is going to do them a massive favour because obviously, 12th man, there's going to be more Arsenal fans than Man United fans, so that's going to help them. But it's hard to see where the mentality is going to come from, you know. Arsenal have lost the last 2 games on a bounce. Man United have won their last 2 games. So it's a very different momentum that each are going into this game. I would be concerned as an Arsenal fan. Are you concerned?
Here's the thing. I liken it to Chelsea, Manchester City, but Arsenal have 1 extra point. Arsenal is sitting 4 points ahead of United. So it's not all blown up. It's not all lost for Arsenal. If they do actually lose this, it is all lost for United if they lose this. I would say more hangs in the balance for United right now than it does for Arsenal, because even if United take these 3 points, Arsenal still sit 1 point ahead. So that makes me a little less concerned because, like, just statistically, this is a much bigger game for Manchester United. If they lose this, it's done. Of course I'm concerned. What kind of a question is that? I'm extremely concerned. You played 2 games where you essentially have barely been able to create any type of dangerous opportunities. And you've conceded in 2 games, many, more than 2 games, but at least in the last 2 games back to back. And I think United are going to come into this and play Arsenal very well. The last time these 2 teams faced each other was in the 2nd week of the season at Manchester United, and they drew 2-2. And I think this game is going to be, honestly, very similar to that game. And it's a total toss-up. This really could end in a draw. I think it's going to come down to which team can actually pull their mentality out finally. Both of these teams have been struggling with, like, hey, let's, like, set something on fire right now, right? Let's come out and try to win this game. Both of these teams are so lackluster sometimes this season. And whichever team can find their mentality to win a game again, that's who's going to win.
I am going to continue with my hot takes and terrible opinions, and I'm going to say it's going to be 0-0 until like the 85th minute when Mark Skinner throws on Rach Williams and she gets the winner.
It's not that hot of a take to think that Rachel Williams is going to get the winner. But 0-0 is pretty hot take with these 2 defenses, to be totally honest. I mean, obviously I'm going to have to pick Arsenal because I just have to right now, but I am very concerned. And I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout. I'm going to go 3-2 Arsenal. But I also, my heart says it's probably going to be a draw. But I'm going to go 3-2 Arsenal.
So we are moving on to Sunday, where the bulk of the games happen. First, we're going to talk about huge game, huge Tottenham versus Aston Villa. 2 teams on very different trajectories. Villa seem to just be on a sliding slope down towards the bottom, whereas Tottenham seems to be kicking it up a notch and trying to push on.
I will say, though, weirdly, these teams have the same record in the last 5 games. They both won 2, lost 2, and tied 1. It doesn't feel like that because it feels like Villa have been disappointments and Tottenham have been playing well. But in the last 5 games, these two teams have the same record. And notably, there will be no Rachel Daly for Aston Villa.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. So we did tweet about that, and she has retrospectively been given a 3-game ban for a very nasty elbow on a Bristol City player in their last match. So Bristol City fans
have you seen a clip of it? I still haven't seen a clip of it.
I have, and literally, it doesn't even feel like in-game play. Literally, she's being bothered by the defender, which I get, that's a defender's job, and literally she just elbows out straight into the face. Like, it's a moment of frustration. It's a moment of anger from Rachel Daly.
Anyways, how do we feel like this will impact Aston Villa?
Huge, because they've got 3 massive must-win games to keep their WSL dreams alive, because otherwise they're getting dragged into this relegation battle.
Yeah, that's true. Let's talk about that. They're sitting in 8th. 3 teams below them sit on 11 points only. So they're only 2 points ahead of West Ham, Everton, and Brighton. And then Bristol City sit behind that. So you are very correct here. A loss will probably drag them into this relegation battle because we also have Everton playing West Ham. So assuming one of those teams win, maybe that'll be a draw, but if one of those teams win and Aston Villa loses, Villa's automatically dragged below whatever team wins between Everton and West Ham. I'm kind of excited to see how this team plays with just Ebony Salmon up top. Because I'm making the assumption right now that with no Rachel Daly, Ebony Salmon will get the start up top. I just think that it's kind of like how we were talking about Vivian Miedema. It's like if Viv's on the field and she's playing on the wing, I feel like the whole game becomes how do we get Viv the ball? And it's kind of the same feeling here with Aston Villa where it's like, okay, how do we get Rachel Daly the ball? And perhaps, and this is my like very glass half full speculatory observation, perhaps without Rachel Daly, they can just play more as a team and not just constantly be trying to get Rachel Daly the ball. And it might open up a chance for Ebony Salmon to shine, which frankly, she hasn't been able to do in the WSL since she played for Bristol City 3 years ago.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. So I'm hoping it will be a good opener for Salmon to get herself in there. But I still don't see the direction that Villa are going to go in. They just go into a tailspin.
I agree. I think if I'm picking somebody in this game, it's Tottenham. But I think Villa will do better without Rachel Daly than everybody is anticipating. All right, let's move it right along. Brighton will be hosting Liverpool. Brighton sitting in 11th. They are one of the 3 teams tied on 11 points. But they sit just above Bristol City in 11th place on goal differential. And they, of course, as I mentioned, will be taking on Liverpool, who've had a surprisingly strong season. But in the last 5 games, they've only won 1, they've dropped 2, and they've drawn 2.
Yeah, it's actually a bit like Leicester in the fact that Liverpool had such a strong start to the season, came away with the surprising win for their first game, and then sort of have been a bit hit and miss.
Although, to be fair, they have been playing City and Arsenal. They drew against Tottenham. They beat United, but they drew with Bristol City. So they can beat a good team, but we can also see them draw with the bottom of the table team.
I worry for Brighton. They did sack Melissa Phillips, which seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere and is concerning because she was building something. She managed to get some very good signings for them in the summer and was building.
It definitely feels like, and I'm glad you brought this up, it just feels like she was the scapegoat for the higher-ups at the club to say, okay, well, we're just going to say that by sacking our manager and bringing in somebody else, we're making changes. But there was no reason for that.
Exactly. Yes, sometimes you get a new manager bounce, but I don't see that for Brighton.
I don't see that for this. I think it was a shock sacking, and it's not going to be a positive outcome. I think it's actually going to be a negative outcome for Brighton. They might have just written their own destiny by that.
Correct. I agree. I think they were comfortably mid-table and were not even considered relegation fodder, and now they've been drawn into this cyclone for it, and I don't think that sacking's going to do them any favours, and I think they're going to go into this Liverpool game and it's not going to end well for them.
I unfortunately do agree. I think Liverpool are playing well of recent. They drew with Tottenham. They beat London City only 2-0, but London City played them well. And listen, I think it's gonna be a tough game for Brighton. I think they're gonna get pulled deeper into this relegation battle after this weekend.
Now over to the game that's got my attention. Of course, we can only be talking about Everton versus West Ham. Now you talk about a relegation battle game. This is it. Both teams are tied on 11 points. West Ham are only on top by goal differential. Everton beat them in the reverse fixture. If West Ham win this, it'll be the first time in their WSL history that they've won 3 games back to back. This game is huge. This game is huge.
This game is massive. It's really big. And I don't think it's going to end in a draw. I think somebody's going to take the points off of this game. I think we might end up seeing a bit of a goal fest from both of these teams, to be totally fair. I'm so sorry, but I think Everton will take it.
Rude.
I really do. I really do. Listen, they prove that they can score. They scored 7 goals in the 5th round of the FA Cup. They're coming off of that. They've been able to hold Leicester City, relatively hold Chelsea. They only lost to Arsenal by 1 goal.
They didn't hold Leicester. They lost to Leicester.
Well, hold Leicester City to 1 goal is what I mean. I'm so sorry. That's what I mean. And like you said, they took the reverse fixture at West Ham, and now they're playing at home versus West Ham. I think it's Everton's. And I think all of that hope that West Ham fans felt is going to be dashed.
You just hate West Ham after what happened last week is what I'm saying. Because you said that about Bristol. We beat Bristol. You didn't think we had hope against your Arsenal. Beat you 2-1. I think West Ham are going
Nobody thought that you had hope against Arsenal, though. Let's be fair about that, okay?
No one did, but we did it. I honestly think this West Ham team are going to go in with such a momentum. And I am biased. Of course I'm biased, but I do think West Ham are going in with such a momentum. And then you look about how Everton played Leicester, it was shockingly bad. And it's only because they weren't playing a higher team that they weren't punished by more goals, to be honest. Everton are a bit like Brighton. They have been on this downward spiral for the last half of that first half of the season. And I think they're going to continue going down on that downward spiral. We saw how they went against Chelsea. I do believe they won't have their manager on the sidelines because of his red card in the Chelsea game in being sent off. That's going to have a huge effect because you've got an unfamiliar person giving
That's true.
the orders and everything else. So, and they were playing against a Northern League team in the FA Cup. So you would expect a high rugby score for a game like that. I think West Ham will take it. West Ham have taken it to them in their ground before, and they'll do it again.
All right, and our final matchup this weekend, this Sunday, we have Leicester City hosting bottom of the table Bristol City. The last time these two teams played, Bristol City hosted Leicester City, and Leicester City took it 4-2. Allie, what do you make of this game?
So this game, we've talked about must-need games, must-win games of like Bristol, 100%.
Bristol City, they're going to get mad at you.
They are going to get mad at me, sorry. Bristol City, 100% need to win this game. They're like, if they don't win this game, the Great Escape ain't happening. Let's be honest. Because, say, for example, even if the teams above them, so say West Ham Everton do draw and they lose, that is 6 points they've got to make up and hope that those teams drop. That is hard. That is really, really hard, especially when you look at who they've still got to play. So Bristol, a draw's no good to them. They need the 3. I don't see it happening. I'm sorry, Bristol City fans, but I don't see it happening.
Bristol City right now, they need more than just head-to-head matchup wins against these 3 teams that are sitting above them in Brighton, Everton, and West Ham. They need to beat another team to make up ground. And when you look at their remaining schedule, they've got this game playing at Leicester City, and then they're at home versus Brighton. Okay, we'll circle that one as perhaps they can beat one of those teams on top of them, but then they're still sitting 2 points below. So they need to make up ground. And other than that, they're at United, they're against Tottenham, they're at Arsenal, they're hosting Liverpool, they're hosting City, and then they're at Chelsea and finally Everton at the end of the season. So they need this game. I agree with you. If they can't pull off the 3 points, frankly, I hate to hang my hat on this before the end of the season, but frankly, it's not happening if they can't pull this off.
No, exactly. And we've seen before that they've managed to come back into games. They're not very good at starting games, Bristol City. They have very much always come from behind to scrape a point, to just miss out. I think that Leicester City are going to take it because they're going to want to put even more ground, because remember, they're only 2 points above the middle of the pack relegation battle with the West Ham, Everton and Brighton. They're going to want to put those 3 points between them, and I think they're going to come out all guns blazing, and I can't see where it's going to come from Bristol City. I can't, because it's just not happening for them right now.
I can't see where it's going to come from either, but I'm just going to say it. I'm going with Bristol City because I have to, because I have to have that hope. And to be honest, you look at their last 4 fixtures and they've lost 3, they've drawn 1, but the 3 that they lost, it was all by 1 goal differences. That was against West Ham, that was against Brighton, and that was against Liverpool. And then they drew against Aston Villa. So they've been playing better. They've been able to pull off better results. And they could pull it out of the bag here. They have more to play for. And I think sometimes when you have a team that has everything on the line and they're playing against a team that quite honestly doesn't have everything on the line right now in this game, that could be the difference maker. All right. Massive matchups this weekend in the WSL. And then next week, we get to talk international break, baby. So it's all happening. And of course, we've got NWSL preseason kicking off next week. So we are rolling. And as always, tune in every Wednesday here with us at the Women's Soccer Show. You can head to our Patreon, patreon.com/TheWoso Show for extra content. And that's it for today. For the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Ali.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.